Welcome to the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. Today, we have the privilege of hosting Utkarsh Narang, founder and CEO of Ignited Neurons. With over 15 years of experience spanning healthcare, leadership, and e-learning, Utkarsh has led cross-domain teams and coached executives globally. His diverse skill set, certifications as a happiness coach and neuro-linguistic programming coach, as well as work with notable clients, make him a true thought leader. Join us as we explore his journey, successes, and the wisdom he brings to the world of coaching. Let's get inappropriate. Welcome to another edition of the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. Welcome all of our listeners. I'm Paul Angelle, your host, and our special welcome, we have a very special guest, Mr. Utkarsh Narang. I hope I pronounced that right. To save me the trouble, so I don't have to do it, could you let our listeners know where you are and how you got there?
Absolutely. So, Paul, you did not butcher my name at all. It was perfectly done. And what I really start with always is that the name means to progress. And so to have that name and to be on your podcast is such a match made in heaven, I would say. So I'm in Melbourne, Australia, Paul. I'm in the future, and the future looks really good. And if folks are going to listen in till the end of the podcast, then we might give them the number for the lottery tonight, and they will win it because I know the future. So that's where I am. 39 years on the planet, out of which almost half of it has been spent working on ideas and building a path for myself that I enjoyed. The journey started back home in Delhi, India. Parents were both doctors, so that said, Utkarsh, why don't you become a doctor? And that's what used to happen about 25, 30 years ago, that if your parents were doctors or engineers, specifically in India, then that's what you got to become too, because that's the rule. And I was not compelled to be one, Paul, but I find I did find the joy in being a doctor, so I became that. But then the journey took multiple turns after that, and here I am in Melbourne, Australia. Never did I imagine that I'll be having a conversation with Paul in the US and going to listeners across the world.
It's a crazy world, and you just sometimes need to roll with it. But that's
Absolutely.
interesting. I'm your company, of course, Ignited Neurons. What inspires you to start that? And for our listeners, what is that?
Yeah. So the idea for Ignite Neurons as the name started in 2016. And I'll just backtrack the story a little bit for our listeners so that they can connect the dots well. Uh, while I was a doctor, so I became a physiotherapist, a physical therapist for some countries. And what we do is that we help patients with pain, whether that's a back pain or a joint pain. And it was going all well. I did that for about 6 7 years. I was healing patients. I had 3 clinics in Delhi, India, and it was profitable. And so anyone could have said, Utkarsh, you have a dream life, so yeah, just enjoy that for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and then one day you'll die. But I was not comfortable with that reality. And so in 2012 I started to feel like, what the hell am I doing on this planet? Like, I can see maybe 10, 20, 100, 1,000 patients a month, but is that enough for me? And is that all I'm going to do in my life? And at that time I started to kind of see like what else is possible from my life. I started to meet people, network to see if I could do anything, because I wanted to really have a global impact on the planet, touch lives in the US, maybe in Australia, maybe in other parts of the world. And as I went to my parents saying that, guys, I'm thinking of leaving all of this that I've built, selling this off, and starting something new. And they're like, Utkarsh, how do you, like, what's wrong with you? Because they were always meant to be who they were, and they thought that now once you have a job, once you have a profession, once you have a business, you just run with it for the rest of your life. But through networking, I met a professor at Columbia Business School in New York, Paul, where I reached out to them and we connected. And the founder was in India at that time, so I said, "Can we at least have like a conversation? You have a startup where you're trying to build leadership content for the organization of the 21st century. So let me see if I can add any value." And as I reached that office, they were like, Utkarsh, you're a physical therapist. Why are we even wasting our time? And I told them, like, give me 3 months and whatever you need, I will make that happen. And if after 3 months I fail, I go back to my physiotherapy days, I go back to my clinic, and no questions asked. And all I need is to just pay me a certain decent amount of salary, because I'm going to be up at 6 a.m. taking care of my patients, then be at your office at 9 o'clock, stay till 5, 6 o'clock, then go back to my work. And so from being an entrepreneur, I switched into a corporate job, which to some might seem like, Utkarsh, why the hell did you do that? Because you had your own business, you could grow it on your own. But sometimes you need something else in life, and that's what I was seeking. And so, my first role, Paul, as you and I were preparing for this conversation, we were speaking a lot about cameras. My first role with that institute was actually to film and edit video lectures. And so I would be at the Columbia campus in New York multiple times a year, and I would be filming with these professors. The first time I handled a camera, it was like, whoa! It was I think a Canon uh, Mark 5 or something like that. I don't even remember the name now, but I just found so much joy in holding that camera and creating those videos. Did that for about a few years, and it was during that time I thought, like, Utkarsh, how do you really hone your skills of photography, of videography? And I realized that if I could push myself to take a picture every single day consistently and post it on social media, then that'll allow me to use the camera well, and that'll allow me to learn a new skill. And so I started a project Happiness at that point, Paul, where I would go onto the streets of wherever I was, from New York to New Delhi to Mumbai, any place, and I'd ask people, strangers. It was like the humans of New York, but the question was, what is happiness to you? How do you create a satisfactory life for yourself? And I would take a picture of them. And at that moment, the page that I created on Facebook was called Ignite Neurons. And the idea was just that the neurons in our brain, they fire all the time. This conversation is going to change you and me, Paul, and the listeners. And so if neurons are firing all the time, they're igniting all the time, then that's what we all need, to have inappropriate growth, to have a life that is well lived. So that's where the journey began, Paul. And I'm going to pause my monologue to allow you to dissect and dig deeper.
You today have a coaching philosophy. What do you think would be, was there a pivotal moment specific in your career that really shaped that philosophy that you have today?
Absolutely. So I think during my time with that institute in 2017, when I was trying to move from a creative field to more operations and sales, the institute said, Utkarsh, there's something wrong with you, because every few years you are trying to redefine yourself. You're trying to redesign your life. From being a physical therapist, you went into filming and editing. You did produce these 400 hours of video content that are now being sold to organizations of the world. But now you're seeking to become an operational head and get into sales. And what's wrong with you? Why don't you get yourself a coach? I'm like, what is a coach going to do? Because I did not believe that sitting across the table with someone on a Zoom call could change my life. But I went into that conversation with my own resistance, but still a little bit of curiosity. And through that conversation, I realized that when I was going through that coaching process, it made me understand myself a little bit better. It made me understand what my values are and what's that desired life that I'm trying to build. And once that unlock happened in the mindset, Paul, at that moment I realized that that's what I want to do for others. Because we don't realize sometimes that we're living in this almost like a slumber state. We wake up, we eat, drink, procreate, and then we sleep, and then we wake up again, and now we've added Netflix and Instagram scrolling to it. But that's all we do. And that's not enough, because this life that's been given to us, it's pretty epic. We can create some good stuff from it for ourselves and for others around us. And so to have you unlock that highest potential, to have you live a life that's full, you need someone to act as a catalyst. And that's what became my coaching philosophy, that I'm going to enter into a conversation with you, and I'm not going to say that, oh, I know all the solutions because I'm the coach here, but I'm going to be sitting with you, nudging you along the path, but allowing you to find your own unlock, your own mindset, your own key to that challenge. And that's the core philosophy that we use at Ignite Neurons.
I wonder, with all your roles, how do you balance that? You're a learning consultant, you're an executive coach, you're a CEO. Do you have to compartmentalize, or do they all kind of work together?
Yeah, beautiful. I think a few thoughts come to mind, Paul. As I'm hearing you speak, like, we call certain things good and certain things bad, but what I feel like, it's all in that on that spectrum. And I could be good today but bad tomorrow. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a pessimist, and I'll be in varying degree that specific thing on a specific day based on how I'm feeling. So that is one challenge, and I think the only way to solve that challenge is to build that awareness that you're speaking about. Because the world is nothing but just like 8 billion perceptions fighting against each other. That my perception is better than yours, and what I say is the right thing to do. Because no one in the moment will ever, I've rarely seen it, say that, oh, I'm completely wrong. It takes a lot of courage to say that I'm completely wrong.
Well, for the most part, there's exceptions all the
Yeah,
time, but for the most part,
absolutely.
it seems like we judge others based on their worst actions. We
Correct.
judge ourselves on our best intentions. And
Correct.
that's not
Beautiful.
really fair. Awareness is what I think is where the work is.
Absolutely. And the work is in you, because you're the one who's got to build that awareness. And as a coach, I'm not be able, I cannot step into your shoes. I can try it, but I don't have the wife that you have, the room that you have, the children that you have, the business that you have. So I can never say that, oh, I know this. I can try and understand this, but there's a big difference between the two. And so as a coach, my role is to help you build that awareness where the answer can come from within you. And that's going to be the ideal spot. And as you're talking about, like, all these different roles that I have, of being a business owner, of being a coach, of being a consultant, a facilitator, I think at the core, I'm a human being first, right? And so that to me is like the challenge that I want to present to the world, that first humanize yourself, stop to judge yourself. And once you get to that place where you have that power within kind of really unlocked, that spark ignited, that's when you build upon it. And the first step to that is coming back to awareness. That, and what I say, Paul, is that there's this 2% rule. If I were to ask you, Paul, what's 2% of 24 hours? And it's a little bit of a complicated maths, you'll think about it, but I'll help you because you're the host. 2% of 24 hours is 28 minutes. And so, what I tell my coaches and people who I speak with is, start to spend that time on yourself and with yourself. And if you can spend 28 minutes a day thinking about yourself, thinking about your journey, thinking about who you are as a person, thinking about where you're going, what you're trying to change about your life, I cannot take it that you cannot build the best solutions in the world. Elon Musk has the same kind of a brain that you and I have. It's just that he has used it more than maybe we are trying to. And so if you start to spend that time, and you can have all the rituals that you want, but start to spend 28 minutes with yourself, and then you become the force that the world has to reckon with.
Well, what strategies have you found most effective when you're helping, let's say, managers transition into leaders or future leaders?
Absolutely. No, I think that's a very core area of work that we love to focus on. See, as a manager, when you are an individual contributor, all you got to take care of is what you do, your work, your projects, your timelines, just you, and that's a very beautiful space to be in, because there's no responsibility of your people, of your team, of the organization. But but over time, these behaviors get very concrete, and so when you're appointed to be a manager, then you're unable to become a leader, because all you're now thinking is that, oh, I got my work and I got their work. But you have to learn to kind of merge that together. And so for managers, it's very important, again, coming back to that same point, Paul, is that they go through that mindset shift, that we're not an individual contributor anymore. If I do my job well and my team does not do well, I'll not get the promotion, I'll not get the bonus, I'll not be helping the organization reach its goals. So now my biggest goal is to really empower my people, to help them grow and remove this fear, Paul, because sometimes managers, I've seen this too, that they start to fear themselves, like, oh, if I help my team a lot and if one of them excels, then the management is going to put that person into my position, and I'll be redundant. But that's not how it goes. If you're here and your team is here with you, you bring them up so that you can go up, you bring them up, and that's the process. And that needs a big mindset shift, that we will grow together and we will grow in the same direction. I've seen a lot of teams where the focus is completely dissipated. The manager thinks A is important, the team thinks B, C, and D are important, and that never helps. So building that mindset where you create the right practices to do regular check-ins, have high level of communication, make sure that empathy as the core is at the core, that's what helps you become a leader. And it's not like that there's this like one pedestal that you're chasing, Paul, that once I reach that pedestal, I'm a great leader, then nothing needs to be done, I can sit on my laurels. That's not how it works. It's something that you got to do day in and day out.
I'm curious. Could you tell me about maybe a challenging coaching situation that you encountered? Maybe how you navigated it successfully when maybe you weren't sure how you were going to do it at first?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's happened a few times because ultimately each person brings in a very unique challenge. So I was once coaching someone in Arizona, Paul, and that person was going through a very difficult time. The first coaching call that we got on, they were just on like on an onslaught of just sharing how difficult and how bad and how uh, everything was wrong for them. And we spent like the first 35-40 minutes of that conversation just they were in that victim state where they were sharing their story that, oh, this is not working and that is not working, and this, my manager is wrong, my spouse is wrong, everyone is wrong around me. And so it will not work, Utkarsh. And even this coaching, I don't want to do it, I've been forced upon it, so maybe I'll come for this one session, but I don't want to do anything else. And in my mind I'm thinking, oh, this is not the right kind of a coachee. Maybe I should not have gotten on this call, maybe someone else should take care of him, maybe they need more help than I can provide them. And we're going like on a downward spiral. And I think in that moment I was like with them, like that, yes, this coaching is not going to be working for you, and don't do it, and blah blah. And then at the end of it I said, now that you've shared everything, how does that make you feel? And they paused and I paused, and they said, Utkarsh, lighter. I'm like, tell me more. And then as I started to kind of nudge them towards that space of being lighter, they started to elevate themselves. That I'm feeling light because I've been able to share this with you. I had no one who I could share this with. I was bottling it all up within me, and now I'm empty. And now I'm ready to receive. And as that shift happened, Paul, it still sends goosebumps down my spine. But it was just empowering to see that one question of asking someone, how are you feeling? And really listening and paying attention to what they're going to say the next moment just shifts the energy. And it's been now 6 months that he and I are working together still. And it's been a beautiful journey. I feel like that person has evolved a few times during those conversations over the last few months, and now they find that shining silver lining in everything. They enjoy the black cloud, and they enjoy the sun that will come after the rain and the rainbows. And it's a complete mindset shift, where from being a very person who was victimizing himself to becoming now feeling like, oh, I can empower others. And that's the journey I feel like I need to take my coaches on, Paul. That they start with this space of that there's like a strong dependence. Utkarsh, what would I do without you? To going to a stage where they're like, Utkarsh, I think we can now meet maybe once or twice a month just to maintain this what we built, but I don't want to see you every week. Okay. And then this reach a stage of dependability. In that stage, I feel like let's end your coaching journey. We will maybe meet once a month or once every quarter. And now you're a dependable person. So from being dependent to independent to dependable, where others can come to them and say, can you help me? And they're ready to support them.
Yeah, that is nice. What role does well-being play in leadership development, and how do you incorporate it into your coaching practice?
Yeah. So I go back as soon as someone asks me about well-being, Paul, I go back 20 years to my physical therapy days. And if a patient were to walk into the clinic and say that I have a pain in my knee and it's severe, and if I would to ask them questions, and we would to discuss that, the center of their existence becomes that physical pain. And if you have a toothache, or if you have a pain in one of your fingers, all your attention gets diverted to that pain, to that finger, to that challenge. And in that moment you cannot do anything else to the fullest abilities. And that's what physical health means, right? So that's what well-being means. And it's physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's financial. All of these come together to make that one person. And I've started to kind of push the boundaries on this too, that sometimes health could also be spiritual. And I don't want to put religion in the middle of it, but just spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, and financial health. When you're able to take care of all of these, that's when you're able to build a life that's meaningful. That's when you're able to build a life that's a life well lived. And well-being is at the center of everything that we do as human beings. So yeah, that in coaching also, it becomes the center of all our conversations.
As someone who's worked with Fortune 500 companies, what insights can you share about fostering innovation and growth within large organizations?
Yeah, large organizations, the challenge is always that there are too many stakeholders to influence, to build trust, and to make sure that your innovations are appreciated. I beautifully share the story of Blockbuster and Netflix, and how Netflix wanted to sell itself to Blockbuster and just get done with it, and then the world changed for them. But it was their ability to innovate, their ability to see that there is that light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for larger organizations, there are a few things that I feel need to be taken care of. A, every individual, team, and organization as a whole need to feel empowered, that me as a single employee also has the potential of influencing the larger system. So never let go of that control. Feel that you own this system, and you can influence it in beautiful ways. The second is that it all happens over a period of time. So you got to maintain patience. If you're hoping that a big ship like the Titanic could have been taken a left turn and avoided that iceberg, that does not happen that easily, because you're a large organization. So you got to be patient as to where you want to go and what's the direction. And the third is, people at the top, their influence on the organization is very high. They need to make sure that they're using the right practices. They're going through coaching or leadership development for themselves as well, so that when they approach their challenges, they approach innovation within the organization, that's done well. And then the final extra nugget that comes to mind, Paul, is ultimately it's all about growth, right? We all seek growth at an individual level, at a team level, at an organization level. And to get that growth, we have to put in the effort. Whether that's, and we have to allow ourselves to fail sometimes, and we have to allow ourselves to experiment. And that's the ground on which innovation breeds, and that's the challenge that large organizations need to solve for.
I can totally relate. I understand exactly what you're saying. It's not where things are comfortable that we grow.
Not at
We
all.
grow when we scared, or we grow when we're not sure about what's going to happen. For the most part, we all want things to improve,
Yeah.
and we don't want things to change. Well,
Yeah.
there's but you can't have both.
Correct.
And it's on the edge is that
Yeah.
innovation happens. It's where
Yeah.
things are learned. It's where growth happens.
Yeah. Recently gave a TEDx talk where I wanted to speak about all these career changes, the life that I've built, and I was focusing on courage as the core emotion. But then one of my very close friends said, Utkarsh, why don't you focus on fear? Because fear is something that's innate to a human being, and that stops us from growing. See, when we're trying to take a next step or the first step in a new direction, the lizard brain says, Utkarsh, what the hell, man? What if you fail? What if you fall? What if you embarrass yourself? What if everything goes wrong? And that's when we need to train the modern brain to ask ourselves, but Utkarsh, what if everything goes right? What if you move to Australia from India and everything is beautiful? You have a new home. What if you change your career and instead of failing, you actually grow 10x? What if something were good to happen rather than everything wrong to go for you? And I think if we can consciously start to that shift, the world will be a very different place, Paul.
What advice would you give to aspiring coaches looking to make a meaningful impact in their clients' lives?
It's about them. It's not about you. Sometimes as coaches, we start to take that ownership that, oh, this is about me. I'm getting paid. I have this responsibility to my coaching. I have to shift their life. Not at all, my friend. You cannot, if you don't give it a strong shot, you cannot change life of people just in your closest inner circle. A friend, a spouse, a child, a parent. And here you're trying to take ownership of a coach's life who's sitting maybe across the world. Don't take that ownership, just go with the flow and remember that it's about them and it's their journey. You cannot walk it for them. You can walk alongside, but you cannot walk it for them.
Right. I have horses, and I can tell you, you can bring them to the water trough, but if they don't want to drink, they're not going to drink. There's nothing you can do to get them to
Absolutely.
drink. I've also
Absolutely.
recently heard, and I've really embraced this idea, and it applies to coaching, and it probably applies to medicine and all sorts of things. But as a healer, as a grower, as a facilitator, fall in love with the problem, not your solution.
Mm.
And that's helped me in a lot of decision makings where, like, because I get a curveball, somebody throws something up, oh, I've never heard that before. I could fall into your whole drama triangle weeds problem with it, or I could step back and look at it and say, there's a problem I can appreciate. Let me, while I'm trying to think about how I would approach this, one of the things you said earlier, which I love, because when I don't have something to say, I use it.
Mhm.
Tell me more. How do you feel? As they're telling you more, a lot of times, and this is unexpected, but a lot of times what they'll say is, when they're clarifying, okay, wait, it's not as extreme as I interpreted it the first way you said it. Now that you clarified, that's different. That's not what it was. But thank goodness I didn't jump into my solution that I love so much. It's their journey, and they have to they have to figure it out. If you tell
Yeah.
them the answers, they don't learn.
Yeah. The three words, Paul, that change relationships, especially marital relationships, are not "I love you," but it's "Tell me more." And I think to every listener. If you have a partner who's sharing something with you, and you've had an amazing day, and you're wanting to jump the gun and say about like how amazing your day has been, just in that moment when they say the first sentence, just pause and ask them, "Tell me more." And then be there with them to listen to that, and that's going to take your relationship to the next level. It's not "I love you," but it's "Tell me more."
Well, I appreciate that because I am a big believer in tell me more, but it's not something I use with my wife or my kids or anything like that.
What's
Um,
stopping you? Beautiful.
how do you stay motivated and maintain peak performance in your life in
Mhm.
order to be able to work with others?
Yeah. So I think there's no like carrot at the end of the stick. It's not that there's a stick that's being hung in front of you, and I'll chase the next salary, I'll chase the next business, I'll chase the next podcast, I'll chase. There's no chase happening. You're just sitting in one place. Just find that joy in why you're doing what you're doing, and that to me is the best way to keep yourself motivated. And I think so. I've this journal, Paul. If folks were to be interested, they can buy this from Amazon. And the first few, it's called the Ignite Life Journal. It's about 180 pages of exercises. And the first conversation that I have on this book is that motivation is really 20th century. In the 21st century, it's been overused and abused and misused, but discipline is the only way to move forward. If you're not disciplined of showing up on calls, if you're not disciplined of doing the sales calls, if you're not disciplined to waking up and doing your physical activity, eating right, then life's going to be a little hard. So you got to choose your heart if you want to be disciplined and make it a better life, or if you got to be all over the place and wait for that spark of motivation to come. So igniting your spark is actually building the discipline that allows you to ignite that spark, not waiting for that Monday morning or the January 2025, I'm going to change my life this year kind of motivation.
What's next for Ignited Neurons, and what legacy do you hope to leave in the coaching world?
Yeah. So I moved from India to Australia last year, Paul. So it's been a very recent shift. It's been 16 months in this new country. So the client base was strong in India because we do a lot of physical workshops as well. So now we have moved to a new landscape, new geography. So building a business in Australia, that's been a joy. But I continue to coach people across the world through Zoom, which is such a blessing. I think the next big leap for us is we've been doing a lot of ones to one work, but I think it's time to do like one to many work now, where we can have like a group of 20, 30, 40 people and do some level of group coaching where there's such core accountability within each other, because in that support system you find a lot of growth. So yeah, that's the next big leap that we want to do. And then hopefully there's another book coming by next year, which is again based on my evolving relationship with fear and how it's been an ally over the last 2 decades. which is something that I think we can put in the show notes for people to watch that TEDx. They'll enjoy that experience.
Sure. Well, and I happen to already know there's a podcast in the works. So you talk
Absolutely.
about the ultimate one to many. I mean, depending on which your audience looks like, you could have thousands listen to something you said a year ago. You know, that's what's really neat about that medium.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've really learned a whole bunch of stuff. I'm glad you joined. I appreciate it. I put things in perspective. I really, really enjoy it. I saw some things that I know myself, that I think myself, and I got some new perspectives to kind of challenge what I think, and that's always good. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you to our listeners or our viewers. And a reminder, if you're going to grow, chances are you're eventually going to have to do something inappropriate.